Before we jump into the episode today, I want to share something with you from my heart. First of all, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I really can't tell you how much your support means to me. We've been doing the podcast now for almost 4 years. I can't even believe it. And I'm so grateful for each and every single one of you that listens, shares an episode with your friends, sends me a DM or a text message letting me know how an episode resonated with you or any aha moments. Seriously, I couldn't be more grateful to be able to create this podcast. It has been such a blessing in my life, and I love hearing the ways it's been able to provide value in yours as well. One thing you might not know is how much work it takes to be consistent with a podcast. In fact, did you know that the majority of podcasts don't make it past episode number 10? And we are well beyond that. And it's just a lot thinking of the episodes, recording them, editing them, managing the guests, making sure that everything runs smoothly and gets uploaded consistently and regularly. And so that's why I have created an amazing opportunity for you to support the podcast monetarily. And in exchange for that, you will get exclusive premium subscriber content. So for as little as $3 a month, you can become a premium subscriber of the podcast. And every month I will upload new voice-guided workouts and breathwork meditation audio for you. So that way you can work out with me, coaching you in your ears. You can also take a moment to reduce your stress and relax and come down and ground down with one of my breathwork audios. So if that is on your heart to support the podcast for as little as $3 a month to become a premium podcast subscriber, I can't tell you how much that means to me and the growth of this podcast. I appreciate you. If you're interested, click the link in the description, become a premium podcast subscriber, new content every month, and while supplies last, I'll send you an exclusive podcast coffee mug so you can have your self-love and sweat coffee every morning. I appreciate you. Now let's get into the show. Welcome to Self-Love and Sweat, the podcast, the place where you'll get inspired to live your life unapologetically, embrace your perfect imperfections, break down barriers, and do what sets your soul on fire. I'm your host, Lunden Souza. Hey friend, it's me, Lunden Souza, online lifestyle transformation coach. I help people all over the world just like you who know they are meant for more, get their mind right and their body tight, and go from crazy busy to crazy happy. And hey, if it's our first time meeting, welcome. So happy to have you. And if you've been with us for a while, it's so great that you're here too. I'm really excited to share this episode of the Self-Love and Sweat podcast with you. Hey, I want to tell you quickly about 2 ways that you can get connected beyond the podcast to uplevel your health, your life, your fitness, reach your goals, but also support the podcast as well. So the first option is our Self-Love and Sweat monthly members only meetup. We meet up on the last Saturday of the month on Zoom for 90 minutes to cover some important topics, to answer your questions, and then to also do a workout together. It's a great way to have that support, have that accountability, get supercharged, and get reminded that there are other people all over the world on this journey of self-love and sweat, and you don't have to do it alone. You can join your first month for only $1 using code SELFLOVE1 at checkout, and then it's $27 a month after that. So you go to lifelikeLondon.com/monthly, use the code SELFLOVE1 at checkout to try us out, test it out for only $1 for your first month, and then you can be on board to listen to the podcast, join up on the meetups, and just really feel like you're connected and thriving on this journey to reach your goals. The second option is our Strong at Home for Women 8-week dumbbell-only workout plan. We have women all over the world getting stronger from the inside out right at home, right? So we're ready to take action to get stronger despite the circumstances of the world. And we know that we're not about to do that alone. So embark on this 8-week journey with us. You can go to lifelikeLondon.com/strong at home. You can pick up your 8-week plan. And the exciting thing is that every 8 weeks, we open it up, myself and my co-coach, for VIP all access coaching with us. So not only do you get the plan, but you get Zoom fireside chats with us. You get an exclusive way to chat with us anytime so you can ask your questions, share your progress. And we're always continuing to stay connected and motivate and inspire each other on our journey to get stronger, no matter what that means for us. So if you know that you're meant for more, you're ready to get stronger from the inside out, and you're just like, yes, I need a plan and some structure, something to tell me what to do. I know I'm ready, but I need that coaching. I can't do it alone. We are here for you. You can go to lifelikeLondon.com/strong at home, pick up the plan, figure out when our next VIP all access registration is opening so you can get that support and guidance. And the third thing, I said there was two, but the third thing is you can do both. You can join us for those monthly meetups. You can be there for the 8-week program. You know, this coaching and this support is here for you. We want to get you real results that last so you never have to start over again. And so you guys are awesome. Enjoy this episode. Get connected. Self-love and sweat, friends. Hey everyone, welcome back to Self-Love and Sweat, the podcast. Today we have a guest with us, a special guest who's been here before, Laura Martin. She is a trauma specialist and lifestyle mentor. We had her on the podcast before because previously, and what she was working on was a lot of stuff with gut and gut dysfunction and helping people there. And so we talked a lot about the gut and gut healing, but now she's made this beautiful pivot, this beautiful transition into becoming this trauma specialist and lifestyle mentor. So I'm super excited to have you here, Laura Martin. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you so much for having me back. I'm excited for this.
I was sharing with Laura before we pressed record that I feel like a lot of people, at least that I know in my circle, people I love and respect and think are super awesome humans, are really like digging their cleats in the dirt and making that pivot and transitioning into a space where they really feel called to lead and to serve and to help even more people. And so I know that's what you are doing, because before, when we had you on the podcast, you were really into the gut and into gut healing. I think we talked a lot about IBS and things like that. How is what you're doing now different? And how have you taken what you've learned and all that knowledge on the gut and kind of brought it into this trauma specialization and lifestyle mentoring?
Yeah. So I found myself being in gut health and I was really good at it. I know a lot of science things. I'm very left brain, but I was very unfulfilled with it, you know, and I kept working my way back because that's the journey of a mentor. You're looking to figure out like, where did this actually start? Like, where can I get to? And I realized it was in trauma, right? Like all my gut issues, all my anxiety, all the depression, all the body dysmorphia, all that stuff had been stemmed from a dysregulated nervous system that stemmed from trauma and life experiences and having to reprogram all that to actually heal myself. And it got to a point that like, I don't think about my body anymore. You know, the shape, not that I don't, you know, care for my body. I work out every day. I eat really well. I do things, but it's just, I've healed myself so much that like my body is not a part of my journey anymore. And so it was hard to continually have that conversation where I was like, I get it. And if I keep having these conversations, I'm just going back to that position where that's not what I'm really about. I'm really about polyvagal theory. I'm really about the nervous system work. I'm really about, you know, having magnetic relationships and making lots of money and feeling regulated while you do it and like having these bold conversations. And so that's more the arena that I'm in now, is helping women, specifically women is who I target market, but everyone can kind of do this, alchemize their grief to turn it into gold. You know, how do we use this? I know, especially beginning stages entrepreneurs, it's, I'm not ready yet. You know, I haven't healed myself yet. And it's like, yeah, none of us have. That's the whole point of this. And so how do we actually grab it? How do we heal how do we regulate our nervous system so that we can create these big visions, to go after these things, to have these awesome orgasmic relationships, to, you know, talk about money in a way that feels good, to, you know, talk to our family and heal those wounds, to have these sisterhood things happen. Like, it's so much bigger than gut health. I mean, gut health is I love it. Like it's my daily practice to care for it, because if I don't take care of it, I'm going to feel very rubbish. I'm not going to be able to have these big visions and have this clarity of my body, mind, and soul. But it's just so second nature now that I don't know, I wanted something bigger and bolder. And so why the heck not? We get one life. Why not just go do the things that our soul is like my soul is just like itching at me, being like, this isn't it. You're good at it, but this isn't it. And I was like, after my recent breakup, I was like, burn it all down. Let's go. Like it just made this massive pivot and it just feels so good.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And just as you're evolving, just kind of following what your soul is guiding you and telling you to do, it sounds familiar to me in the sense of me with fitness. It was like, I love talking about it. There's a daily practice there, but there's so much more. And the moment that I found more options and more tools, outside of just working out, was like gold for me, where it was like, oh, whoa, there's so many options. And like, there's so many ways I can do good for my body that don't have to be just this. And, so I feel you there, where it's like, it's so valuable. You're thankful for your experience with it, but you can't really ignore that, that calling and that shift there. And, you said a key word for our conversation today, which is breakups, because I originally reached out to Laura to ask her to come on because she has been coaching a lot on relationships and relationships with yourself and being single and like doing the work there so that you can be in a elevated next level feeling type of relationship with yourself and with your partner, and probably with, other people as well. So what kind of, inspired you to go down that route? I guess it was your own personal breakup. So what happened there? Paint that picture for us.
Yeah, actually, it wasn't my current breakup. So currently right now, I'm running a program called Sacred Singlehood. I planned to launch this in January, where I thought I was moving in with the love of my life and I would be engaged in a few months, right? Like we were looking at housings, we were looking at this whole thing. We were planning our leases end like this month, our leases end next month for him. We were planning on moving. And I had planned in January to launch this, being like, I nailed it, because before this, I was in a 2.5 year long domestic violent relationship. Now it's been about, I want to say 5 years since that chapter of my life, but there was drugs, there was drinking, there was domestic violence. I almost died a few times. And coming out of that relationship and realizing I was this quote unquote wounded bird, and which is actually what stemmed all my health issues and everything behind that. But coming out of that and trying to go into partnership again with other people, I then turned into this protected, self-protected trauma response, quite frankly, an asshole. Like I was like, no one can love me. I remember this really good guy. This is what changed the whole narrative. Like this really good guy, one of my best friends. We started dating straight after that relationship, which was way too soon, but we all do it. Jumped into that and he told me he loved me. And I went, why did you do that? And it crushed him. It crushed the relationship. Like it was this whole thing that happened. And then, he did it back to me when we like rekindled whatever. And it was one of those moments where I was like, I take radical responsibility and I'm never doing this again to another human. So I had these sacred singlehood years of 2 years, right? Like where I was like, I'm good, I'm healed. And I called in my current now ex-boyfriend, where I was like, oh my God, wow, like this is love. Like this is so healthy. This is so magnetic. This feels good. And I was at this space where it was like, this love is an extension of me. And it still is. That's why I can lead myself through this. I love that man very much. This has shaken me in my soul. I did not see it coming, and I'm perfectly fucking okay. Like it is just an extension of me, and that's what led me to this love. So the program came before the actual thing, and I was like, okay, because I had shot a prayer up to God. If you guys don't believe, universe, source, interchange the name in whatever you choose. And I was like, can you give me the death I need to rise to my highest power? Because like I said, I kept getting that scratch and I was not making moves on it. So I was like, God, like, I thought it was going to be some money mindset thing, some black thing. No, like business, like my apartment where we were moving, and then my relationship. And I was like, okay, I guess this is where we're at now. And of course it's in the midst of running this program. And I was like, you make no mistakes, my dear. Like, let me lead myself through that. And it's just, 10x'd what this program is, of like, even when you do the work, that does not mean it's going to work out. That's not the point of this. That's not the point of healing your nervous system. That's not the point of loving after trauma, being like, I'm going to find the one. It's like, how are you going to become that one for you? How are you going to feel safe in that? How are you going to understand that love is just an extension, so that when you go into love, there's no attachments. It's okay. Like, it's never a guarantee, as sad as that is. It's never a guarantee that love's going to work out. It's never a guarantee that that's your person for a lifetime. It's not a guarantee their health is going to succeed. There's all these different kind of spinning points, but when you actually get regulated in yourself, it's like, okay, I'm good. And I mean, it also is helping me hold my power during the moments where I'm like, nah, wanting to text the ex and doing all the things that we go through. It's like, girl, look at the program you're running right now. Absolutely not. Hold your power. Like, it's one of those things that it was unexpected, but it came from the pride of the previous chapter of my life, like previous Laura Martin 1.0 version to that in-between period of navigating it to then calling in love and then seeing how that cycled in this moment, which I'm just here to surrender to it and just kind of ride the waves of it at this point.
I love that. Yeah, you can't, what would my dad say? You can't control the waves, but you can pick which ones to surf. And so I think sometimes, like you said, you just have to go with it. And it's like, lo and behold, you're in this single space again for yourself while you're leading this program. I mean, it can't ever be more perfect than it is. But I know sometimes you're like, oh, that's not what I was thinking. That's not exactly what I expected. I did a podcast on breakups as well. And I got a lot of questions and a lot of feedback from that, which is why I think this conversation is so powerful. Relationships, breakups, all of that is so, it's so real life. And I remember when I was single for about a year and a half, there were a lot of, moments of doing this work and, kind of spending time with me where I noticed a lot of patterns and there were like, oh, that's why these things, I don't know, keep happening, or I keep seeing this same thing in a different form, and there were a lot of moments where I was like, oh yeah, I can see that. So what patterns did you notice in yourself and like in your program and stuff like that? How do you help people like, not just like, oh, look you're making that same mistake all over again. It's like, we need to have, like you said, I don't know exactly what you said before, but you're like, everything you do is great, or like some little kind of pep talk to yourself you just mentioned. It's like, how do we kind of embrace and, hold space for kind of really seeing these kind of loops happen and then being able to kind of take action to break them?
Yeah. So for me, science is like my BFF in making sense of things. Doesn't mean it heals everything. I still go through the normal human experience of breakups and all the kind of thing, but realizing this whole quote unquote self-sabotage thing, like pre this current relationship, I always chose, I don't know, like wounded men that didn't have the capacity to love me, and it was always that. And I was like, why do I keep repatterning and doing this kind of thing? And still, to be honest, like the relationship I just had, it had that, but because that is ultimately why we broke up. He's like, I can't love you to the way you want to be loved. And I'm like, what do you mean? Why is this still going? And even though we're doing the work, it's at some new capacity. It's at some new thing. Because even if you're in partnership, you're going to have to do that. But we sit in science looking at what a lot of people call self-sabotage, picking these bad boys, having these tendencies of jealousy or cheating or infidelity or, the little petty arguments we like to choose. What we call self-sabotage is actually self-protection. That's all it is. It's your nervous system somewhere built up probably before the age of 7, but then somehow compounded over time before the age of 25 when you had no prefrontal cortex built yet, or your ego is being formed. That is your self-protection. All of your personality traits, everything that you are, like right now, 95% of who you are is a cellular memory of who you've been. So it's not to sit there and be mad at yourself and be like, why do you do this? Why are you such an idiot? Why are you so jealous all the time? Why are you so insecure? Why are you like this? Why do you choose guys like this? Like all those voices, they can come through and they're just an invitation to be like, okay, so I see that all these things have happened. These are the relationships I'm calling in. These are the tendencies I have. Thank you for bringing this to my awareness. Now I'm going to take radical ownership over that with the 5% critical thinking brain that I actually have and start to challenge these things. And what's going to happen is your nervous system is going to hate that. She's going to sit there and be like, no, like you're going to sit and like want to give space to your partner. You're going to want to so prior to my partner, I'm attached, anxious, I'm crazy codependent, like all the tendencies of growing up in a addiction household, which is how I grew up. Very common. I'm very I was very statistical in that arena. Like I had all those things. And then coming into this one, like if he wanted to go out with his friends, if he wanted to do these things, it's like feeling that pull in your nervous system, understanding like, okay, so this is the thing that's being taken away. This is my reaction. How do I actually want to respond to that? And that's what comes from understanding and befriending your nervous system, because oftentimes our body will feel something. So we'll feel jealousy, we'll feel anger, we'll feel like a tightness, like we'll feel it somewhere in our body. And then our programming, the emotional narrative, will then compound and create the story, which will then create the reaction. So if you can actually feel it happening in your body first and start to make sense with it, I like to use science, being like, oh, that's where that feeling. Okay, so what's the way that I can replace this feeling with something that would give me that dopamine hit, or give me that cortisol hit, or give me something that would balance it? And then create the different reaction from there. And so it takes work. Like I can't tell you how many, get really good at saying, I'm sorry. First step, like sit there, like, and be, when you're in a relationship, knowing like it is going to trigger you, especially if you're on this self-development, especially like, you know, the difference between it. And it's so funny because in those sacred single years, it's like, I was so good. I was so good. I was so regulated. I did all the things. And then I got into partnership. And I'm so not good. Surprise. And so it's being able to bring that into your actual relationship and being able to sit there and be like, feel it. And like, you're not going to catch it right away. You're going to see your tendency come out and then be the first person to sit there and be like, hey, this is what I saw. This is what I'm working on. Here's how I'm doing it differently. And like work with the people that you're with around that. You see this in friendships too, like triggered by your best friend or like one of your really good friends and how they do things and their success in business or their like, you know, their relationship success. Like how can you have these conscious conversations that brings light to your shame in the shadow? Because when we bring light to our shame, like we neutralize that and we alchemize it, which then tells a different story to our nervous system as well. Like there's just a lot to it, I guess, but it really is. It just starts with feeling your body and then noticing what that reaction is. And then from there, starting a different kind of narrative.
Mm-hmm. And I totally relate to where you said, like, when you start to change some of those patterns, you're going to be like, you know, you're so accustomed to your patterns that when you change them, it's really uncomfortable. It can be really challenging and like you feel like out of your skin a little bit. One thing you mentioned was like during the sacred single years. And I was wondering if there's a time frame. I know that there's probably not a magical one for how long you need to be single, of course. I remember when I moved abroad, a lot of people told me like, give it a year. Don't think about if you like it or if you want to come home or anything, give it a year. And sure enough, after around that year mark, I really started to feel like a little bit more at home, a little bit more rational in my thinking. But these years or year or whatever, how long is the time frame? And I say this because I noticed a pattern in myself. I didn't give myself time. Like it was always like I was kind of out the door in one relationship and like on my way into the next one. Like so I'm in a relationship now. And before that, I was single for a year and a half. That was kind of like my sacred singlehood time. Before that, I had 3 boyfriends that were literally just like dominoes, like just like dun, dun, dun. Right. And, I kind of felt the same way. I was like, after a year, I finally started like, there was a time frame too, where it's like, I couldn't even think about dating and I couldn't even imagine what it felt like to want to date and want to be in a relationship. I was like, I think I'm going to be single forever. No way, you know, but then over time, you know, the healing process starts to take effect and things change and whatever. But, 1 year, 2 years, how long, how do you know when it's time to start dating again?
I mean, that is up to the individual, like everything. You know, it's like, when will I lose those 10 pounds? It's like, I don't know. Like when you put the work in and you do the things, you know, like everyone, especially if you've done trauma work or you're in the self-development work or you're in the nervous system work, like you'll calibrate a lot easier. But just like you described it, you'll know. Like right now, the thought of dating to me, I'm like, no, thank you. But I downloaded Bumble for a good 5 minutes just to make sure the other species still exists. And like I could go date if I decided to. But then I was like, no, thank you. Like, I don't feel like that yet. Cause that thought, I'm like, in my body, it still feels like I'm cheating. In my body, that feels like I would be escaping my loneliness, you know? And if that's why we're dating, you're going to repeat this cycle. And the next person that says they don't want to date you, that's going to crush your heart even more. Cause you didn't deal with breakups are trauma. At the end of the day, your body is in this state of arousal. It's stored in your body. Like I can remember my first heartbreak from 8th grade. Like, we remember these things. They're stored in our body. I can remember the name. I can remember the feeling. And if we don't address any of these things, every relationship you have is just compounding on that. And you're just going to project all these broken hearts on this one poor soul until, quote unquote, someone claims you. And then all of a sudden you're going to be fixed. And it's like, no. And then you'll have these relationship problems in your marriage. And it's like, take the time. It could be 3 months. It could be 3 years. It could be whatever. But if you have hope, like, it's knowing that, there's the potentiality that it won't work out. And are you okay with holding that? Have that conversation with yourself. It's not, let me go find this person to claim me, to make me feel loved so I can feel safe, so I can do this. It's like, no, are you okay even if that doesn't work out? Do you feel safe in that potentiality? Then you're good to go date. Like, then it's free to go do that because you're going without an agenda. You're going without these expectations. You're just going with like, I'm going to because I feel good. And now this is an extension and it's an amplifier of this love I already feel. And I feel good about this. Now let me go, and kind of play around with that within your nervous system. Like, I get you. You're going to want to cling. It's uncomfortable being single. Like, the one thing, especially as women, like, it's uncomfortable at this age. When are you having kids? My eggs are getting fried. Like, let me get in this road. Like, it's like, I get you. And you're safe, and rushing it isn't the option, because just like anything, a quick fix doesn't actually succeed in anything. So when we get to this kind of, okay, I'm safe, I'm good, let me breathe into this, focus on the healing and actually doing the healing, not just reading all the breakup books and thinking we're cerebrally taking things in. It's like, no, take this into your body so that we can amplify this experience and actually come into a love that is expansive, not that we're clinging on to, thinking it'll make us happy, thinking it'll make us feel worthy, thinking it'll make us feel like we're belong. It's like, that's why we keep getting into these little sticky pickles. Like, we got to kind of give ourselves that space to find our own safety.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to touch on what you said about like the possibility that something awesome. So you're feeling good about yourself. You're not going out into the dating world, looking to fill anything. It's just like, I feel good. I'm ready to be in that space. And then that next point, I love that you mentioned, like, it can not work out. And what would that feel like? I think so often, and I hear my friends say this and people I work with too, it's like, how do I know when he likes me? And it's like, well, how aren't you figuring out if you like them too? Like, the vetting process really goes both ways. And sometimes that can feel very uncomfortable. The thought of, oh my gosh, it could not work out. It's so great. But at some point, they could find something that's not compatible about me and vice versa. Like, I could see something in them. And I just feel like that pattern of thinking like, oh my gosh, it's awesome and it has to work out or I'm going to freak out. And like, how do I know when they like me? And just kind of this waiting for the other person to be the decider. And it's like, how does that play in? And how can we show up to the table like, a bit more confident and also being able to, be cool with it not working out and being able to have that courage too, to say like, oh, red flag. I don't want that in my life. Not a bad person. It's just like, not that. How can we kind of build that confidence to do that?
Yeah, that's dating yourself, right? Like, understand it. Like, this is where it's so important. Date your friends, date your life, show up for yourself. Like, when you're looking for things around you to fill these voids that are more stable, like deep friendships, masterminds, mentorship, groups, people in your community, impact, purpose, like, go look up Tony Robbins' 6 human needs and please understand them, like really start to integrate them into your life and understanding where you're at and how you want to amplify that. Like, when you feel these things, then this person is just next to you. I didn't get that for the longest time. My dad, oh my God, every time, because granted, hi, codependency, little recovery woman here. He would always say to me growing up, like, stop giving people your star. Like, people just make your star brighter. Stop giving people your star. And I'm like, I don't understand. Isn't that love? Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Isn't that the point? I'm supposed to get married, have babies. This person's going to, justify my existence and make me feel like I am worthy. And it's like, we chase that for so long. And then we sit there and we're like, wait, I could have this love in my life and I still don't feel enough. And that's why we create conflict and problems. And it's like, go date your life, travel alone, go take yourself out to eat, spend time alone, off your phone, stop thinking the dopamine and the likes are giving you this like approval thing. Like, go make really good friendships, go get in like rooms that terrify you and like expand your soul and do these things. And I know, like, if I said this stuff to me 5 years ago, I would have slapped myself in the face too. I would have been like, hell no, I'm not doing that. But like, if you're someone that you're feeling like you're unfulfilled and you're feeling like you keep repeating these toxic patternings and you're waiting for love to fix this hole in your heart and you're waiting for these things, it's like, baby girl, only you can do that. This love, even if when you get into it, and he's the most perfect man, he has the ripped abs and he's tan and he's dark and he's handsome and he comes to you in this white horse, like, you're still not going to feel fulfilled, because eventually you're going to get to a point where the oxytocin wears off and the testosterone and all the little bubbles after usually that 3-month mark, because that's when oxytocin stops. You're going to be like, wait, I'm still feeling unfulfilled. What the heck? And this is when we start, I don't know, whatever, cheating and what have you. And like, just find it in yourself. Like, what in you, what is it that you think the relationship is going to give you? And how can you start to give that a little bit more to yourself? I'm not going to lie. Relationships do give you things. They give you stability. When you have that one thing, like, we think options give us freedom. Like, they actually don't. Like, having one option then gives us the safety to explore. I'm not going to lie that is what relationships do, but you can't rely on it for that, you know? And so it's just like, what are you, good journal prompt, like, what are you seeking from this relationship to get out of this relationship? And is there a way you can start to do that for yourself? And that does not mean, because like what's coming up in my head would be like a contradictory thing, but like, what if I do that for myself so well and I become so independent that I don't need a man? It's like, you won't, because you're not doing it as a way of a defense mechanism. You're doing it because you love yourself. And the way that, like, the best thing about my relationship from the past was that he knew how to love me because I knew how to love myself. He watched how I set my house up and I, made myself bubble baths and roses and how I cooked for myself and how I did things. I didn't have to tell him to do anything. He just had to witness how I loved me. And so he was able to mimic that. And although it didn't work out, I learned so much from that experience, and I was okay that it didn't, because if it's not this, it's something more. And when we have that belief and continue that, because how much love you have for yourself and how much regulation you have, it starts to paint the picture of actually what can come into your life and what you learn.
Date your life. I love that you said that. And it feels good and it can look different for everyone. And I love that, you said like making bubble baths for yourself, cooking for yourself, showing up, without your phone, not trying to be distracted by what's going on and like looking up at the fresh air. For me, being outside in nature and hiking and biking and just like exploring the world, getting dirty, like that for me really feels like dating my life. Bubble baths and self-care and all of that feel just, so good. And really like I'm dating my life. And I think that, and I love what you said. Great journal prompt. In fact, those of you listening, jot that down of like, I forget what exactly, what you said. What am I seeking in the relationship? And make a list there and then go out and try it on and do it for yourself. And safety, security, love. A lot of love is what comes up in the coaching I do. I mean, my podcast is Self-Love and Sweat. And sometimes I'm just like, what are you doing when you feel most love for yourself? And you feel that like, oh, it's a bath. It's this. Okay, go cool. Go after it. Go do more of that. There's not a specific thing that's exactly what you have to be doing. It's just that figuring it out and seeking it out for yourself and doing more of that is a great way to teach people how to love you. I love that you said that of just, you don't need to tell someone, hey, this is how you do it. If you would just do this, 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 and this, and be all naggy, then you would, make me happy. It's like, no, just, I'm happy, I'm feeling good. And this is how I treat myself. And this is what I do. And just kind of, let your partner observe that. It's kind of like a healthy lifestyle too. It's like, I can't just beat someone over the head with like, eat this, do this. I remember, my kind of last serious boyfriend had type 1 diabetes. And while he managed it really well, there was just like a lot of stuff to piggyback on what you said about science, where like when he got diabetes 15 years before, there was different science and different, stuff that was coming out. And I think that he was really attached to some of the habits and routines and stuff he was doing. But I was like, there's so much just more research, more science behind some of these other protocols. And at first, for a hot minute, I was kind of like, hey, you should do this and and then it was like, no, I'm just going to do those things because I could do them too. They're great for me, great for you. And then slowly but surely it would be like, oh, cool. I'm going to, do that or like participate in that. And that was really cool. I like that you said that because we have to, practice loving ourselves so then we can show others, but not like in a way of you have to do it like this. And these are all the to-dos or things you need to do in order for me to feel loved, but just kind of be an expression of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of our wounds, right? Like as women, the difference between like feminine energy and energetics and things like that, if you guys are into it, we love the mothering energy. I know how to do things better. So here, this is how you should do it. And then we wonder why men are like, stop doing that. Like, or we get mad that they're showing up like little boys and we want this man to come into our life. It's like, well, then stop treating men like boys and you'll change that energy dynamic of how things happen. Because when you love yourself, you let them go love themselves the way they want to do it too. You don't know how to live their life because imagine him coming into your life being like, this is how you should be eating. This is what you should do. Holy pickles. We would be like ripping our hair out and I'd be like, red flag, I am out. Goodbye. But yet we don't take that same advice where we're like, no, like I do know better. I'm in this self-healing world. I listen to this podcast. Here, get in the car. Let me play the podcast right at this point so I can subtly show you how to do that. And it's like, stop. Like they will find it on their own time and like they will get to it, like, and going back to like doing the things you love. Like I literally had like in the notes on my phone, it's called Laura's dopamine toolkit, because when you're in states of arousal, going through a heartbreak, going through a hard time at work, going through a friendship thing, going through a diet thing, health thing, what have you, you can't make decisions. Like when you're in states of arousal, you can't make regulated decisions. So those times when you're sitting there and you're like, wow, my heart feels so open right now. I feel really relaxed. Jot it down. What are you doing? So when you're sitting in a conflict, when you're sitting in something that's happening and you're like, let me, fix it. Let me, like that's our natural thing, right? Like when something's broken, let me go fix this other thing and control something else. Let me control my body. Let me control my diet. Let me control my man. It's like, or can you just go to the dopamine checklist in your phone and go find something that actually feels good to you and actually go do that? And then if you feel like you have to fix anything, focus on you and your regulation, not the shape of your body, not the way the person's reacting in the relationship, like taking full ownership over what's happening with you and allow that person the freedom to be an adult and pretend like they are like the power of all human beings. Like see that in them, let that rise in that power. Like, yeah, that's one of the main things I always see my friends do too, where it's like, well, if he would do this and he would do that, these kind of things. And I'm like, are you his mother? Like, I'm like, and then you wonder why he's dropping his socks off and not cooking dinners and not doing dishes. It's like, well, you're not speaking to him like a man, like bring out the masculinity, bring out these things so he can also bring out your femininity and the woman in you. It's like understanding our conversation and again, like, your nervous system is going to want to fight against this. Like it's going to be one of those things where you're like, man, but I can do it better. I can do this. And it's like, just kind of sit in that. And yeah, I mean, it's a work in progress, but if you want someone that is gonna treat you like a fucking queen, own you, like love you, do these things, like the tendencies of the past of controlling, of thinking you can do it better, like just model it in your life. Just model how you love yourself and they'll see it. They'll see you glow. They'll see you happy. They'll see you this thing. And like, that will be a match, it's not doing it. So, they'll do it. I get that question a lot. Like, how do I get my person to do this? And it's like, you don't, you do it. Like, that's it. You release control and you trust.
Yeah. You become it. I love that. The other side of the coin, or maybe like kind of parallel, like you mentioned, nagging and being like, if you would just do this, 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 and this. But I also see the other side too with some of my friends where they'll say that like in our conversation as friends, whatever. And then I'm like, oh, well, have you talked to your partner about this? And like, have you shared that with him? No, he should like, either he should just know, or there's not confidence to share that. So it's like, we're either listing our expectations and wondering why they're not met and they're perfectly listed on the whiteboard, whatever. And then, or not making our expectations, or what we would like need, known and just like talking about them and complaining about them. I always say that's like table talk, or like, I think I always envision like, and nothing wrong with this, but this is just my vision of like women coming to the table at lunch, like having their like lunch date with their friends. And then they're all just sitting and nitpicking their partner. And I always say like, I don't want to be that person. Like, I don't want to be that woman who brings like that table talk, because I want to be able to have those conversations with my partner. I don't want to bash them when they're not there, or like, it's nothing wrong to share a story or an experience to help, help yourself or help someone else, like a friend. Oh yeah, I went through this. Here was my experience. But it's a whole nother thing to just be like rah, 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 behind their back and then being kind of resentful or treating them crappy because they're not like reading your mind. And so I kind of see that too.
Oh, 1,000%. Like that's the thing is why even talking about it on podcasts or anything like that, like my partner, his name was Elvis. I can't keep doing like, oh, my ex, whatever. My partner, Elvis, like every single time we'd have a conflict, it's him and I first. We sit down, we scheduled it in every Friday. And then if he was out of town or if I had a business thing, it was always like we have our check-in every single month. What went right? What went wrong? What do we want to do differently coming forward? And that's where the opportunity presents it. Because here's also the problem. We'd build it up so long until we hit a fuse. And then one day we're fighting about the socks on the floor. And then all of a sudden we're fighting about something from 6 months ago and it doesn't make sense. And all these pots are flying. Like it's this built up tension where you can sit there and like, it doesn't even need to be nitpicking. Like there's certain things where it's like, he would say things and I'd be like, okay. And then like, when we're settled down and relaxed, I'd be like, hey, is it a good time to like talk to you about something really quick? And he's like, yeah, sure. Or they're allowed to say no too. And if they say no, then within that 24-hour period, they have to come back with a better time that we'd be able to discuss. But like, you can also say things playfully, like, don't say that, like in a joking way, not like mothering energy, like, that's such a trigger. You don't know my past relationship and this kind of thing. And oh my God, I'm struggling with that and this outfit. And oh my God, like the things we torment people on where it's like, men are very simple, like, humans in general are very simple. Like you're the only one that's caught up in your own brain and your trigger responses. Like, but you can have the conversation. And if you're not there with your partner, what does that look like? How do you want the conversations to go? So you don't have to talk to your girlfriends about it all the time. Like, like I talk to my girlfriends about literally everything, but I've already talked to my partner about that. And like, when I say things, I'm like, if he walked into the room right now, I don't give a shit. Like he would know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm never talking about my partner in a bad way or an ill way. It's just, we go through conflict. Here's what's going on. I do sometimes think he's an idiot. I tell him that out of love. Like it's this constructive conversation. And it's like, if you want this deep partnership that doesn't involve resentment or bitterness or what have you, like, you have to have the conversation with your partner. And then my brain just went to this other conversation. And imagine the depths of conversation you would have with your girlfriends if you weren't just bitching about your man the whole time. What would you actually know about your friends, what their dreams are, what their goals are, how they want to be loved, what their love language is? Like, imagine the type of friend you would actually be if you also healed that conversation with your partner and how that was going. Like it's this two-way thing. You want your depth on both spectrums. Like, how can you start to build that up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so good. I want to go back to breakups a little bit because breakups can be really traumatizing and really challenging. And I remember, and I actually shared this with you, like I was dating someone for about 3 years and I was living in Austria. We broke up pretty shortly after, as was my pattern. I met somebody else and we were dating for not that long. It was like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, but it just was, I don't know. It felt awesome. It felt right. I was like, oh my gosh, like this person's great. It was, just kind of the lead up to get, and I kind of noticed the patterns a little bit, but I was like, no, this one, he's great. He's awesome, whatever. So it didn't work out and things kind of fizzled out. And I honestly felt like that, breakup, if you call it, or me stopping dating this guy that we were just dating for a few months was so challenging and so traumatizing and so stressful on my body in a way that ending a relationship with someone I had been with for 3 years wasn't. Maybe I was like a long time coming. We had worked on a few things, whatever. But I remember feeling so much more sad, angry, traumatized, all of that for this person I didn't even really know, And so so with sharing that story, I just remember feeling so like, oh, it was so challenging. And I was staying with my parents at the time because I just moved back from Austria during the pandemic, all this fun stuff. And I remember having my friend Berkeley drive me out to this like country area where they were developing homes like 10 minutes outside of where we were living. And we would go in her car and we'd drive out there in the middle of nowhere. And we would just like, she would just hold space for me. And I would just like scream and cry and just, and there would be like rocks there from the construction and I'd like throw it. And it was like, oh my gosh, my body just needed like this release. And so, what's happening to our bodies? I know you said a lot of science is so powerful in your coaching in life. Like what's happening in our body going through that breakup? And then like, how can we best support ourselves while we're going through a lot of those intense emotions where we just feel like throwing rocks and screaming and doing the ugly cry sometimes? What are, some ways we can support ourselves even more?
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing is like, if we don't give ourselves enough space, we are going to be dealing with breakups. When you go through a breakup, it's triggering things you haven't dealt with. The longer ones, like the longer relationships, I do feel like those are quote unquote easier because we see them coming a little bit more. It's not out of the blue. Even like with infidelity and things like that, you're like, whatever, I just wasted all this time with you. Like, why am I going to be mad? Whatever. But then we jump into a relationship and all those emotions we did not deal with are not now compounded on this one that was like, it was 3 months. It ended out of nowhere. I didn't see it coming. And it's like the story that we tell ourselves is ... Thank you, Brene Brown. Like we go through this whole thing and our nervous system hasn't yet calibrated, right? Like we haven't figured out when we're in relationships, like our brain gets used to someone else helping us with oxytocin and dopamine and serotonin and these kind of things. And that's why it's so easy to that quote unquote, like to get over someone is to get under someone else, that kind of statement. Like, and we haven't yet calibrated the neurons in our body, our nervous system to, again, be in conscious partnership, to actually close the doors from one partnership to enter into another. We're just carrying those same beliefs with us, and it's just like, of course, in new relationships, we're going to have old things come up from old relationships, but it's like giving yourself that space where it's like, definitely scream, get it out of your system. Like you can't, this whole like, let me just do yoga and meditate and fancy this man and do all the good things. It's like, I don't believe in that crap. I think just like, who is it? Taryn Toomey, like the basis of all of her classes in New York, like called The Class, look it up. I love their business model. It's like, you have to scream, you have to get it all out. You have to do all this kind of stuff before you can actually drop in your body. Like go through the 7 stages of grief. I can't think of all of them at the top of my head, but anger is definitely one of them. Like, and allowing yourself to do that because we don't, like, we think anger is just this, like, we fear it, at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, anger is just compounded fear. Like anger is just a compounded emotion. But if we don't actually let our body get it out of its system, sadness, anger, jealousy, deceit, whatever we're feeling, it's just then compounded back into our nervous system and it just kind of stays in there and we never really got it out. And then we jump into a relationship and then that one doesn't work out. And then it's like, oh my God, I'm unlovable. I'm unworthy. I'm all the narratives that we jump into, realizing like, oh, I just haven't dealt with that feeling. It's not even that person. It's just that feeling that we weren't able to express, like this current breakup is dealing with relationships with my dad. Like that's the things that are being triggered, and to be able to witness that, like, oh, what emotion is this? Not like, let me nitpick him and blame that person and do all these kind of things. It's like, what are the feelings that we're feeling? Can you write that down? Can you feel that in your body? Then can you, like, your friend Berkeley, amazing. Like, go scream, throw rocks, find an abandoned house. My favorite thing is go into my car, driving on my way to like some type of sculpt class and screaming like the whole way there, getting it out of my system, and then going and dancing in the middle of sculpt class. And I'm like, okay, we got the negative out, and now let's bring in the good. Like, find what works for you and let that be okay. Like, you do not have to be okay. And it doesn't matter if it was 3 months or 3 years, it's like your heart hurts. That is okay. Stop shutting that down. Stop trying to find that in another person. Stop trying to get other people to fix that for you. And can you knuckle down and do the work and really see what's happening to your heart right now and let that be? Like, there's a beautiful practice in Japanese. I actually did a masterclass last year on it, I think. It's called kuntsugi, where it's like they break bowls, what have you, and they glue it back together with gold, right? But the whole practice of it is like when you're doing it, and like the art form is it you take the bowl, which is us in our fragile state, and they wrap it in a cloth, which is our survival mechanisms, which is your friendships, which is your business, which is your nervous system tools, which is your meditate, whatever. That's what that is. And then they take the hammer, which a hammer can be a dual object, right? It can be something that breaks something, and it could be something that builds something, and they crack it. And it's this, all the pieces fall, but they're still contained within this safe container, right? Like you watch as the human instantly wants to pick up the pieces and put it back together. And that's the healing part, right? Like that's navigating the in-between to find your way home, because witnessing yourself in your broken pieces and not wanting to fix it, like it's normal to want to fix it, but can you just witness the pain without having it mean good or bad, with having it mean you succeeded or you failed, like without it meaning you're never going to find someone ever again? Like that is not a narrative you need to build in. Like just witness the fact that like your heart hurts. It's not the most ideal situation. This fell through. This is what's going on. And then you can start to slowly pick the pieces that you want back together, glue them, and cover them with gold. Like I love that whole practice. I think it's so accurate for breakups, for navigating things. Like, yeah. And that's, I mean, yeah, I don't know, breakups. They're just
yeah. And I love that. I forget. I met a couple that they lost a son, and then they started this company that, and I don't even remember the name of it. You just reminded me of it, where they would send you the kit to do that at home, like to build your bowl and break it and then seal it with gold. And it was like a very powerful healing, for in their life. And I thought it was a really, just exactly what you said, a great metaphor for this healing journey. When we do start dating again, and let's say it's been a year and a half, 3 months, whatever, as we mentioned, it's very unique to the individual. And, but once we do step in, it's like, how do you coach your clients and even yourself too, of navigating like these red flags, but then also learning to trust again? There's like that kind of bit of like, I don't want to get hurt, but I want to, lean in too. So, how can we better notice these red flags when we do enter dating again? And how can we, learn to trust again?
Ask better questions. Like when you go into a relationship and you first feel like a red flag and you're like, I don't know, like, is that a red flag or is that just my trauma response to old programming? Ask better questions to figure it out. It's not just being like, whoa, oh my God, no, you said the same phrasing that my ex said. No, like, okay, no, that does not mean they're the same person, but you can ask better questions of where did they learn that? How do they, treat what is it like with their last relationships? How is that's a very later in the relationship kind of conversation, but like, what are their goals and their dreams? What's their values? Can you get to know that person outside of the story that you're telling yourself, outside of the relationships that you had? And then if a red flag comes up, say something around their political views or their health views, or, the way that they do business or the way that they've spoken about certain people, like, can you just ask better questions there? And if that question still continues to raise a red flag, get in your journal it out, see what your soul says, see what your heart says, ask maybe a few more questions, and then part ways if that's the case. Being able to sit there and like, okay, I understand, like, this is my response because of, like, my ex, like, he used to say, like, a phrase that my, like, really abusive ex used to say. And to get my nervous system to be okay with that, because it was, like, on the end of I love you, like, both of them said I love you and shit. I don't know why that was like, who taught you that? And why do both of you say that of all things? Like, and the first time he said it to me, I was like, okay, like, okay, we're going to just go with that. And like over time, like that wasn't a reason to be like, I'm never dating Elvis again. I'm never doing it. Like, oh my God, how could he? Like, he doesn't know, and he still doesn't know. Like, he didn't know that was a thing because I didn't think it was that big of a deal. It's an invitation for me to be like, Mark Groves always says, when you get triggered, get curious. Like, do that. When you see a red flag, that's perfect. That's fine. Trust your gut intuition. And then what practices are you doing to trust yourself again? This is where that dopamine checklist comes in. That's where you build your self-love, because a lot of the times if you've been in a traumatic relationship or you feel like you've lost parts of yourself, like you don't really have that intuition anymore. Like you have little bits and bobs, but because for so long you've been dying that down, being like, I want to stay in this relationship to be lovable. And even though my soul is saying like, I don't want to do this, my like nervous system is telling me to leave, like I'm staying. Like, what are some practices you can build self-trust on? Like to be more aware of, like, where are you breaking your own trust? And how do you start to build that up? Like for me, it was like, no more hitting the snooze, like making my bed every day, making sure I'm eating my salads and my foods, and like keeping my word on the gym, keeping my word on my like different kind of things. Like build your own trust with yourself before you try to figure that out with another person. And then when you go into the dating world, it's like, oh, now I do trust myself and I know better questions to be asking when I hear these red flags, and I can trust myself to walk away even if, because now I've done the work to figure out myself and I know love is just an extension. So I'm not going to disregard the red flags anymore because I just want to be picked, quote unquote. Like, no, like you love yourself enough to be sitting there to be like, okay, so what question do I ask to need to, like, what is that triggering in you? Like, what is that red flag against for you, right? And then what are some better questions that you can ask around that? Like, what value is that crossing for you? And then can you ask a better question that would dive a little bit deeper into that without attacking and making them wrong? Because if it's their value, it's theirs. You don't get to tell them that it's wrong. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just asking better questions, getting more curious, letting them elaborate and share why they might have said something or where it came from before you put the ending to that story on it, or you're going to make a reason for it anyways. Might as well, get the truth or at least some version of it from them. Go to the source. And I love that you brought up trusting yourself first before you can really learn to trust again. It's like build that rapport with yourself and all the things that you mentioned, like not pressing snooze, making your bed, do what you say you're going to do, get the things done that you need to for your business on the time that you said you're going to do them. Like always working on building that trust with yourself, doing what you say you're going to do allows you to believe that other people are doing that too. If you're not doing it yourself, how are you going to be able to see that in the world? So thank you for sharing that. I could talk to you forever. I love our conversations and I'm so excited about Sacred Singlehood. So tell us about that. And then how do you know if you are ready for Sacred Singlehood? You have to be single for a certain amount of time, fresh out of breakup. Like who can join in and how can they get connected with you?
Yeah, so Sacred Singlehood is a 3-week immersion for anyone that has been through a heartbreak and they want to fall in love with their heart again. Like they don't fear it. They want to know the tools, the regulation practices, all these kind of things. You don't even need to be single. It's just a good SS kind of title that I really loved. Mm-hmm. Because you can be in partnership and do this work if you feel like you don't have the depth in your relationship and you feel like you're pouring from an empty cup. Like all of these tools and practices to help you re-enter the flow of your life in that in-between period. So when things are in flux, which they are, whether it's your relationship, your finance, your business, your people, your moving situation, like we live in an in-between moment. How do you create certainty in your life so you can regulate your nervous system and handle that shit? That's what this program is. Like it is, especially at this point, like it's such a pivotal point to be running this. Like I will never again be single, fresh off the boat, and also, doing a pivot in my business in the same time. Like it will never be this more potent than right now. And to be able to walk through that transitional time, like the universe makes no mistakes. Let me tell you, my friend, I can't believe. But yes, so that will be, over on Instagram, if anyone wants to get involved in that or any of the other programs that we have. It's a wild experience. Yeah.
And I'll link everything in the description, but tell us your social media handles and everything so those listening can connect with you like right now.
Yes. So my Instagram it's Laura Patricia Martin. So ITS Laura Patricia Martin. And then our business one is Healing to Happy. So that's Healing TO Happy because sometimes people do the number 2. It's not the number 2.
Got it. TO, and we'll put that all in the description. Thank you, Laura, for being here to share all your wisdom and all this value and your heart. And you're so open. And I'm just so thankful for you and for the work that you're doing in this world. Get connected with Laura, jump in her program. It's super awesome to know that even if you're not single and you're seeking that depth more in relationship, it's like we can always continue to improve on dating ourselves, whether we're in relationship, fresh off a breakup, been in the single journey for some time. It seems like everyone will be able to find some sacred singlehoodness in their life through this program. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Self-Love and Sweat, the podcast. Hey, do me a favor. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, give us a review. This really helps a lot. And share this with a friend. I'm only one person, and with your help, we can really spread the message of self-love and sweat and change more lives all around the world. I'm Lunden Souza, reminding you that you deserve a life full of passion, presence, and purpose, fueled by self-love and sweat. podcast is a Hit Spot Austria production.